While he'd been musing, Enoshima had shifted into her teacher guise, adjusting a pair of glasses as she propped up a comically large corkboard. Now, to what's next on our itinerary as ultimate despairs. There were several printed out photos, charts, and graphs on the board, and she tapped a pointer against a photograph of herself and 5 children. Direct your attention here, if you would. Izuru's eyes drifted over to the children in the photo, 3 boys and 2 girls, about 10 or so in age. All had brightly colored hair, except for one whose appearance was hidden beneath a handmade leather mask. The model tapped the pointer against the photo again as if for emphasis. While you've been ignoring me for the past few months, I've been out making more connections. Meet Towa Monoka-chan and her little friends, the self-proclaimed Warriors of Hope. Enoshima scoffed and tossed the glasses aside. Ugh, isn't that just the most disgusting title you've ever heard? But hey, they're kids. Give men even the slightest bit of affection and they'll lap it right up. They can call themselves whatever they want, as long as they call themselves mine in the end. The name she'd mentioned triggered a flash of recollection, information fed into him by his teachers. Towa, as in Towa Takuichi, she is related to him. Bingo! Little Monica-chan's his brilliant but unwanted bastard. She's actually the chief executive of the Towa Group's robotics branch at such a young age. That means she's got access to all their materials, all their resources, all their robots. Enoshima rubbed her hands together gleefully. And since I've been such a great friend to her, she's agreed to take a commission for me. Soon I'll have enough robo-bears to cover the world. I'm thinking Monokuma sounds like a good name for them. And that's not even the best part. Oh no, see, there's this kid in my class, Fujisaki Chihiro, the ultimate programmer, who was invited to work on this rather fascinating project at the start of the school year with Yasuke and some other chick. After lots of talking to Fujisaki-kun and looking through Yasuke's now available notes, I finally analyzed just what exactly it is. And let me tell you, it holds some rather delightfully despairful possibilities. She tapped a large sheet of paper giddily. Izuru examined the information there, a spark of interest flickering in his chest. A therapeutic program intended to help those suffering from PTSD and other traumatic events. Technology and techniques that, theoretically, could cure mental manipulation, a peaceful, unassailable virtual reality as the stage. You want to get a leg inside this program somehow, he theorized. And corrupt it so it will further spread your despair. A virus of some sort inserted beforehand is the logical conclusion. Then you will test the program via a proxy to see how well it works. Someone give the man a prize! Enoshima cheered. You got it in one! I took the liberty of making it already! A nice little Junko 2.0 who will infect everyone in that program with my lovable personality. Even if I die, I will live on. Ah, how wonderful. Now, this is only a last resort, in case something happens to me, which means something happened to my sister, too. The ugly little pig wouldn't know how to live without me. And with the way my brainwashing works, most of my despairs would also fall apart, so that leaves only you to fetch my AI and upload it in the event of my untimely and tragically despairful death. Would you do that for me, Kamukura-senpai? She fluttered her eyelashes. An AI, a mind-altering program, a virtual reality with no outside interference or influence, only what existed within. A way to see which was truly stronger, truly more unpredictable, hope or despair. The first fragments of a plan began forming inside Kamakura Izuru's mind. I shall, he said, and Enoshima squealed in girlish delight. Oh, I knew I could rely on you. My AI is going to be in Towa City, so if you ever need to pick it up, just mosey on over there. She locked her hands behind her back and smiled, rocking back on her heels. All the pieces have fallen into place, and soon the show's going to start. Graduation day, that's when it all goes down. You can wait for just a few more weeks, can't you, Kamakura-senpai? I promise it'll be all worth it. Shh.
Sure enough, only a few weeks later, at the end of the school year, Enoshima launched her plan. The fall of Hope's Peak Academy had been a senseless slaughter. Buildings set alight and both students and faculty cut down in a variety of creatively painful ways. Then the mass suicide, the talentless Reserve Corps students leaping out of buildings or running into flames. Their purpose served. It was both boringly predictable, everything went exactly according to Enoshima's plan, and unpredictably chaotic. The behavior of the main course students was interesting to watch, to try and see which of them would break down and cry, which would try to fight back, which would run, which would stay with their friends, which would abandon them to save their own lives. Truly, the final confrontation between hope and despair will be a sight to see. One that would hopefully, finally, provide him with the answer he sought, provide him with freedom from this monotonous existence. He'd entertained Enoshima and her sister for the final time, listened to her monologue, double-checked that she'd erased the 77th class's memories of him, and then come back down to the complex to finish preparations for his departure. First, he did as he said he would and removed his memories of the 77th class. He predicted that Nanami would want to know about their fate, so he'd only erased his knowledge of their personalities, not what they had become. This also allowed him to retain his ability to deduce which areas they would flock to, and avoid them. While he wished to make his next encounter with them more interesting, he also wished it to be on his terms, and those terms did not include having an unconscious Nanami in harm's way. No sooner had Izuru finished erasing his memory before he was off to fetch her and take her away from this place. Transporting her presented a slight conundrum. Medically and physically speaking, it was proper procedure to have a team on hand to strap her into a gurney and maneuver her away. Seeing as he was only one man, that option was not available. But there were others. He unplugged the girl from her IVs, carefully strapped her into an evacuation chair, and left the complex. He emerged into the aftermath of a battle. Bodies of the Reserve Corps students littered the ground around him, red slowly seeping into the pavement and grass. The mass suicide had put an end to all the fighting on the academy grounds. All was deathly silent, except for the sounds of a chopper's whirring blades. His eyes slid up to where he could see the news helicopters hovering in the air above, spotlights shining down and highlighting the gruesome carnage. Avoiding them was child's play. He simply calculated the areas the reporters would be most focused on, the areas with the most death and destruction, in addition to anything largely symbolic, as well as the angles, sizes, and speeds of the beams, to deduce where and when the lights would be sweeping. Using that, he navigated a quick, easy, and unseen path to the gates, which had been torn down by the Reserve Corps. Izuru deftly maneuvered Nanami's chair over the twisted metal and headed to the ambulance he'd stolen the day beforehand and parked further down the road, hidden from view. He quickly hooked Nanami back onto the IVs awaiting her. She had neighbors in piles of other supplies, necessities for her survival and his that he'd moved here the day before. His laptop was safely in its bag, sharing space with the consoles and games that Izuru had, after a bit of thought, packed for the ultimate gamer. Everything was tied down securely so that it wouldn't go flying and hit Nanami, or so she wouldn't go flying. Then he slid into the driver's seat and turned the key in the ignition, one hand already pulling up the GPS on his phone. Staying at the academy was an option he'd considered, but discarded. Enoshima had gleefully confessed plans for another killing game before they departed, telling him to stay tuned to the news. He didn't know when Enoshima would start it, but when she did, the entire area was going to become a battlefield as people predictably tried to break the doors down to rescue the students. One misplaced bomb or landmine could cause part of the complex's ceiling to collapse, potentially on top of them. Furthermore, food and supplies would eventually run out, which meant he would have to leave to fetch more, and everything the school had been repurposed inside the shelter for the 78th class. Stealing it from them would be more trouble than it was worth. So no, this time the most logical thing to do was to seek out civilization. He had no intention of mingling with those within any more than what was necessary to restock, but the choice of location mattered. It had to be large enough to provide easy access to the supplies he and Nanami needed, but small enough to avoid catching the ultimate despair's eyes. Izuru had scouted out several locations that would suit his purposes just fine, and made his decision based off his analyses of where despair would be the slowest to strike, how populous each place was, what supplies it offered, natural location, distance, and other factors. He was confident in his selection. There, he would wait out both her recovery and the time to finalize the details on his plan. And so they drove off, leaving the dying academy behind. Time passed. Despair continued to spread across the world. Enoshima Junko bided her time in the shelter of Hope's Peak Academy, waiting for the chance to spring her game. The ultimate despairs, among them the 77th class, committed unspeakable horrors in her name, their minds broken and twisted into believing they were doing good. The Future Foundation was born in the face of this conflict, struggling to fight back. Miles away from it all, Kamukura Izuru arrived at a quiet little town and quickly set up a place to live. Occasionally he left to travel to large cities and observe the chaos there, but for the most part he was a ghost on the fringes, a shadowy protector for the girl within their sanctuary. Until one day, Nanami Chiaki's eyes fluttered open and met his. End of Chapter 3. Author's note. Izuru just did not want to cooperate with me this chapter. It's going to be so nice writing Chiaki's point of view. Screw the Neo World program and screw trying to figure out when it was created. The best I could deduce was that it probably wasn't made specifically for the remnants of despair, because all the equipment and that whole lab on Jabberwock Island would probably have taken months to build, so production probably started in advance. And it sounded like the sort of extracurricular work a student might take on, so... Also, Junko's using male pronouns for Chihiro because, given her ultimate analysis, she's probably already figured out his secret, assuming he hasn't told the class by now.